you look at the middle class, they are really not going to be impacted much, except for maybe, you'll have some references, some jeweler saying, Nita Bhavi ne ye pehna tha, ye hai. And if you look at among the super rich, they may say, hey, you know what, I'm not an Ambani. There's so many references, decor, and the number of vendors who have put these up on their own presentations. This is great news for vendors who are working in the luxury space, because the 1 crore budget for decor, I'm quite sure will become 1.5 crore. That's
Nice,
a lot.
yeah.
So in those circles, there is definitely that, awareness, inspiration created. And for the first time ever, has a wedding been talked about for so many days, and somebody who is not a Bollywood wedding. And again, till 2000, Bollywood weddings were also secret marriages, right? The heroine didn't want the whole world to know she's
Yep.
married. Not everybody wanted that. Or they were, simple at-home affairs with one post-wedding reception.
Folks, welcome to PaisaVaisa. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter, and we are continuing our sub-series on how business works. And today's guest, today's topic, today's business is absolutely fascinating. Something I've not done so far on our show, weddings. My guest, Parthip Thyagarajan, CEO of WeddingSutra. We'll be talking about wedding, scale, grandness, happiness, money, cost, and much more. Welcome to PaisaVaisa, and thank you so much for doing this for our audience.
My pleasure, Anupam.
What a fascinating business to be in. Tell us how you landed up here in the first place. And you go back to the business goes back to 2000. So you're going to be 25 years old soon for this business. You're among the earliest. And I believe that it was a .com craze that brought you in. Let's start from there.
When I was working, I always dreamt in the corporate sector, and when I was studying, I always dreamt that I will be a businessman one day. But I also thought I will never have adequate money to start one, at least in the first few years of my career. What dot coms did was that when dot coms were in the news, late 99, early 2000, there were a lot of inspiration around you, folks who were quitting their cushy jobs, as they say, to launch a dot com. And it was my business partner's idea, my batchmate from MDI Gurgaon. And it was her idea. And when she shared the idea with me, I knew one thing, being a media person, that a lot of brands allocate significant advertising budgets for weddings, whether it was the Vanity Case by Samsonite, Diamonds, Kodak, Travel, a lot of since I was working at the Times of India Group, I knew that significant advertising spends are for the wedding market. Our business model is more or less same what it was in 2000. I obviously didn't know much about e-commerce. There was nothing like social media. I didn't even know much about wedding planning and management, which is quite a hot career today.
Yeah.
The whole goal was to be a magazine online and a platform which is all about weddings, and of course have some related
Yeah.
businesses.
Yeah.
And when I heard the idea from my co-founder Madhulika Mathur, I knew this is it, and this is something I could take the plunge.
What are the challenges, right? Because when you started this in the .com phase, there were all kinds of things happening. There were portals happening, yahoo.com, sify.com.
मैं
There was
भी
so many.
.com.
Tell us about the challenges, because I don't know how.
I don't know, Anupam, how I even survived it. Just telling people what I do. One is, we all know wedding, what a big industry is. But at that time, it was not even an industry, right?
Yeah.
It was hugely unorganized. It continues to be unorganized today.
Even today.
And I don't know how I did it. We all know how weddings is fascinating as a subject for discussion. People are always talking about the last wedding they attended, what they ate, what the bride or groom wore, or what the entry was. But even today, it is very difficult to document what is really, who are the people really in different towns doing what are the kind of budgets like, because it is so personalized and it varies greatly, city wise, community wise, and of course, what the bride and groom or the parents want.
Yeah.
And back then, to create a content resource around weddings. I can't even imagine how I did it. Going and asking couples for their wedding photos. There were many wedding vendors back then, but of course, they had no idea how Wedding Sutra could add value to their business.
Mm.
They probably would have said, okay, if there are any leads you can give us. But they really did not, really understand what role uh, a media company will have in their life. And it was such a struggle,
Sure.
not only creating that content, but also getting information or insights on this wedding industry. Even today, I must tell you, Anupam, I personally know about 500 wedding planners, but I travel to a place, destination wedding hotspot for a event industry conference, and I end up meeting 5 event planners or wedding planners who are doing very good work whom I've never heard about earlier.
Wow.
So that is, and there are so many people out there who are who are in the news doing good work. I know about them,
Sure.
and there are an equal number in different cities who are doing huge work, be it in decor or catering, whom I've
Yeah.
not heard about
Yeah.
earlier.
So, for our audience there who've not heard of Wedding Sutra, and they can please check out weddingsutra.com. Tell us about your business model, and of course, what everybody wants to know, how do you make money?
Well, when I started Wedding Sutra, the first question a corporate executive or anybody who was fairly well educated, ये सब ठीक है लेकिन आप पैसा कैसे बनाते हो?
Okay.
Do I charge people to visit the website? Do I um, is there some kind of a listing thing, or are you selling jewelry and Kanjivaram saris online?
Mm.
Then what are you doing? I think my own background in media, my co-founder's long-term vision, and my tolerance to ambiguity,
Mm.
all that helped in us retaining our goal of building a brand.
Okay.
So we knew we will spend less, we will get a little bit of money. So we know that was the time, the year I launched Wedding Sutra, I personally know of 20 wedding portals. And again, there would have been 100 women portals, and there were so many other portals which were, as you would be knowing,
Nice.
coming up then. But there was this insight that in India, the wedding planning is really done by the parents. The vendors will be very much chosen by, word of mouth references.
Mm.
And a wedding platform like ours will have a lot of inspirational content. Back then, we were creating a lot of inspirational content on beauty, fashion, relationships, a little bit of wedding information. But I must tell you that none of the brands, most of the brands, like I'll give an example of designer brands, they didn't
Mm.
even have a web presence.
Yep. Yep.
And ours was, and that was also the time when many of the media houses didn't really have a wedding special
Yep.
supplement or magazine. So we were one of the few platforms who were creating wedding content. So
Mm.
that is why the Wedding Sutra was much more relevant back then too.
Sure.
And today we are creating our revenues through broadly through 2 streams. One is through sponsored content, which is who brands who want to do sponsored posts or articles, and through the top luxury and destination wedding vendors who are taking a membership fee. We call them Wedding Sutra favorites, which gives them access to our events, knowledge sharing groups, educational initiatives, and of course, push on social media and featuring their content. So that's really our revenue model today.
So I want to look at this from both the sides. Now you've already given me one side, which is the vendors. Okay,
Yeah,
there they pay you a fee, you get to list them on your site. But for me, the service is free. Like if I am a consumer
absolutely.
and I'm getting married and I
Absolutely.
come to weddingsutra.com and register and all, everything is
You don't
free
even
to
have to
me.
register because
Okay.
the moment I tell you to register, chances are you'll exit. Content, see, it's different if there's a publication which has been there around for 40 years, 50 years,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
have the registration and fee payable. Today, even a Facebook,
yeah,
which is so important for our Instagram, it's like asking somebody, why is Instagram not charging folks?
yeah,
Similarly, if Instagram is not charging, and we know how important it is, as a resource for you,
yeah.
how will I get people who are getting mad? I want them to read my content.
Right.
And I know what you're saying. Everybody would say that why don't you pay them, ask them to pay a fee to read your content?
Hmm.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's important to give them content which they can access and 40% of your content can be branded content, because the moment you go into 100% branded content, you are not able to engage with your readers adequately.
Well, as someone who's been running this podcast for 7 years, free of cost, I know what you're saying. So, what are your cost centers like? When you're running this business, what are your primary cost centers?
It's primarily manpower, uh, digital advertising,
Hmm.
and marketing. We do not. We have a small team. We're about 15 of us, and we all work virtually. Post COVID, we've given up our office, and yes, we are
Yeah.
a bunch of happy folks.
And the process of how Wedding Sutra connects brides, bridegrooms to be with wedding vendors, how does that entire process take place?
Absolutely. It's a very, very intuitive process. It is not like the way a lot of people define it. The bride comes in, she she asks a vendor for a quote, she books. Again, it's what people told us 24 years back. Why don't you sell jewelry and saris online? Or
Mm.
why can't people book their wedding venue? I know a lot of folks just said, I'm on your site, but I'm not able to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just found it very difficult to imagine how can you create just content for people to read. Everything is not about action. You can engage with your audience, give them relevant content,
Mm.
and everything does not have to be booking your venue or photographer or makeup artist, because everybody is getting married for the first time. There is a certain information which those who are getting married already have from their friends. Word of mouth has a huge role to play, and therefore, I am featuring vendors' real work, which is the weddings which they have done.
Mm.
Just listing a photographer and talking about the camera he uses
Yeah.
is not relevant for a bride.
Correct.
But if I'm showcasing 10 weddings which he has done, and one of the weddings is a Hyatt Dehradun wedding,
Yeah.
and the bride is getting married in Dehradun, she wants to know what kind of photos has this photographer shot.
Yeah.
Is he from Dehradun? Is he from Delhi? That is what she wants to know,
Sure.
because it is in some way every vendor has their own forte by work style, location. There are some decorators who specialize in certain venues in Bombay. They may be only doing decor at five-star venues.
Mm.
Some
Mm.
may be doing it at large grounds.
Mm.
Some may be doing in the smaller halls or the Kalyana Mandapams.
Mm.
So that's the kind of content, real content I'm creating. The key really is real brides
Yeah.
stories, real weddings. And that is what is the real story of Wedding Sutra.
Parthip, how has your marketing strategy evolved? You started in 2000 when there was no mobile. There were just websites. To today's mobile and social media savvy engaged couples, or couples that want to get married. How has your marketing strategy evolved?
I must tell you that when the dot com boom happened, you'll probably remember you'll come out of the airport
Yeah.
and you'll find hoardings of websites. And obviously, it was very odd that somebody puts a URL there.
Yeah.
And today it's very different that if there's a URL, it should be clickable. Otherwise, there's no use printing a URL in a newspaper ad or putting it up on a hoarding.
Mm.
So we've basically worked. When we started, it was a lot of PR, uh, co-creation of content. We would go to publications and say, hey, you know what, publish some content by us and give us credits. That was all part of brand building. And today it's a lot of advertising, on Instagram, even Facebook, to
Yeah.
target parents. A lot has changed and a lot has not changed. A lot too much of spending on advertising also could mean you're not even getting the relevant audience. Wedding Sutra is still targeting those who are probably well traveled, well educated.
Sure.
They could be having a big fat wedding or a slim and smart wedding.
Yeah.
But it's how do we reach out to them through creative collaborations, and of course digital advertising and PR.
Okay, Parthip, I want you to explain to our audience the Indian wedding industry. What does it look like? What are the various components of it? If you have any number to it, that's also great.
Sure,
But for someone, who's new to this market or is listening to this for the first time, probably wants to set up a business, who knows,
sure.
within this, how do you, describe the great fat Indian wedding?
Great.
Yeah.
So there are three things I want to tell you, Anupam. One is weddings are a way of life in India. When you talk about the size of the industry, what do you include in the size? You're attending a wedding, you're a guest. What you go and purchase, does that get included in the size? You're going to Goa for a destination wedding. You stay on for a 3-day holiday with your family.
Yeah.
Does that get included? So it's very, very difficult to talk about this size. And all the reports which are emerged up till now, I keep telling people, when Wedding Sutra comes up with a report, that'll give you the true numbers, at least, especially of certain markets. It's very
Okay.
difficult to say the Indian wedding market is of this size, which is what, but everybody wants to hear
Yes.
that
Yes.
number.
Yes.
Weddings are a way of life. That's point one. Point two, this is a very, very community and you know socioeconomic kind of group driven thing. To give you an example, and if you talk of destination weddings, there could be a Marwadi wedding planner in Calcutta who only specializes in Marwadi weddings in Thailand.
Wow. Okay.
There could be a Sindhi wedding planner in Bombay who is only doing weddings of Sindhis from Dubai who are getting married in India or in a particular country because he specializes, he has the knowledge on that thing. So there's a lot of, it's extremely personalized, and a successful wedding planner in Jaipur
Hmm.
may not be a successful wedding planner in, say, a Mahabalipuram,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
each place you have to develop your relationships, you have to be on ground right from the airport pickups
Right.
to managing the decor.
Okay.
And finally, beyond weddings, wedding planning, there exist a whole lot of opportunities. Everybody thinks a career in weddings is wedding planning. No. For every one wedding planner, there are 50 other successful wedding vendors.
Wow.
They could be decorators, designers, food stylists, bartenders, packaging specialists, a host of the folks in, and many of them are doing exceptionally well. Today, I'll give you an example. I meet a lot of photographers, of course, and I know a lot of them who are working with IT companies in Bangalore. And it was around 2010. A lot of these companies had these photography clubs, and they started shooting their colleagues' weddings because the colleagues didn't want a traditional studio photographer.
Okay.
It was good pocket money for them.
Yeah.
Once a month, they would move away from the IT parks to a very happy environment. They started loving it, and they soon chucked their full time jobs.
Hmm.
And there are 500 such candid photographers who are from a background of IT, anywhere from 500 to 5,000, I'd say. So that's really what the industry is about.
Massive industry
Yes,
and consisting of very different parts.
absolutely.
So that I want to ask you, what's your view of this industry per se going forward? If I were to ask you, how do you think it's going to grow? Are you positive on it? Maybe a couple of trends. What would that look like?
One is the big fat Indian wedding and the slim and smart wedding will both coexist. There are many couples and families who are only wanting to spend and spend, and there are many others who want a small function. They are, if the elder sister had wedding had 700 guests, maybe the younger ones, there are 300 or 400 guests. And as long as parents in India spend on their kids' wedding, the wedding industry is only going to flourish, because the moment the bride and groom start spending, you can be sure that the budgets will be cut by 50% or 75%.
Hmm.
Uh, just as how the arranged marriage phenomena continues to exist. It's not just even in metros.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
arranged marriages are as common as they were maybe 5 or 10 years before. Similarly, the weddings will continue to be a 2 or 3 day affair with some traditional functions. And but what is interesting for you to know is that currently only around 10% of affluent Indians are having a destination wedding.
Okay.
Even if this changes to 11 or 12%, that's a big change there. And you will find many resorts coming up on the outskirts of the city. It's not that everybody is just probably, even if you take all the destination weddings which happen, only 10% of the folks are going abroad. But what will really happen is, near all the metros, you will find more and more resorts coming up which are targeting the destination wedding segment. And this market is going to grow, where Uh, Couples do not want what is called the five-star hotel banquet, but they are looking for independent venues. And if their hometown wedding would have had about 500 guests, their destination weddings will have less than 200 guests.
Very interesting. And folks, if you want perspective from someone who's in this industry that Parthip just mentioned about a hotel that's on the outskirts of a city, please do check out Ashutosh Goyal of Ananta Hotels, who was on Paisa talking, among other things, about this exact thing and how the wedding business has been a boon for luxury hotels. Parthip, let's get into the biggest event, and I'm calling it an event. I'm not even calling it a wedding because it just seemed to go on and on and on this year. It's something that the media has given a lot of spotlight to. It has ruled our social media. And even if you try to ignore it, you could not. The Ambani wedding. Your thoughts?
This is the first time that everybody in India has got a peek into what a super rich family wedding is about. Because let's face it, any billionaire family, their wedding could be almost as big as this, right? There's nothing as big as this, but
Mm.
as big as this. And many of them happen, these big weddings. But they are very, very closed door affairs. Those who attend these weddings, they know exactly how much is spent, who the wedding vendors are. But anybody who's not part of that billionaire club circle does not know much about this world.
Yeah.
It's a different world. For the first time, those who were on social media, and it's interesting, a lot of people ask me, why did the family not do this on TV? Why did they do it on social media? Probably they just felt it would be more engaging on social media. Unlike, say, a royal family where everything was telecast live. But earlier, if it was all about, let me just go back to the different phases.
Mm, mm.
In the late 80s, when a prominent diamond merchant had a very big grand wedding, there were protests outside Wankhede Stadium saying this is a waste of money. This is just terrible. Fast forward to 2000, the industrialists and business people started spending a little more on the wedding, and it was not just that approach of going to a club and doing it. There was a little bit of
Yep.
personalization,
Yeah, yeah.
and even South Indian families started hosting a mehendi and a sangeet. Fast forward to another 10 years, the rich decided to look at destination weddings. It started with Rajasthan and Goa. Rajasthan, thanks to the visionary in Udaipur, His Royal Highness
Mm.
Arvind Singh Ji of Mewar.
Sure.
Goa started becoming a destination wedding hotspot. In 2010 onwards, it was Thailand. So since then, we've seen so much, and around 7 or 8 years later, it was the Virushka wedding in Italy. And then soon, Bollywood couples started sharing photos on their social media. And this is the first time that so many Indians have got to see how a super rich family really hosts the wedding celebrations.
What is the impact that this wedding has had, either on the wedding industry or anything else, on aspirations? What do you think has changed from now onwards?
Well, if you look at the middle class, they are really not going to be impacted much, except for maybe, you'll have some references, some jeweler saying, Nita Bhavi ne ye pehna tha, ye hai. And if you look at among the super rich, they may say, hey, you know what, I'm not an Ambani, but there's so many references, decor, and, the number of vendors who have put these up on their own presentations. This is great news for vendors who are working in the luxury space, because the 1 crore budget for decor, I'm quite sure, will become 1.5 crore. That's a lot.
Nice. Yeah.
So in those circles, there is definitely that awareness, inspiration created, and for the first time ever, has a wedding been talked about for so many days, and somebody who is not a Bollywood wedding. And again, till 2000, Bollywood weddings were also secret marriages, right? The heroine didn't want the whole world to know she's
Yep.
married.
Yep.
Not everybody wanted that, or they were simple at home affairs with one post wedding reception.
Partip, you answer a lot of questions on Quora also. So, from there, what are the kind of questions that you get most often, and what are the answers that you give there?
So before the Ambani wedding, a lot of questions were on Bollywood, like what is sponsored, what is not sponsored. Do they really pay the designers whose clothes they are wearing? And as I keep answering, it's very different for different stars. But in the last 1 month, a lot of Quora followers have asked questions on the Ambani wedding. Really, how does it work? Who was the wedding planner?
Mm.
And I, in one of those questions, I said, you aware you think there's one wedding planner? Close to 250 agencies, consultants who would have been involved in orchestrating this grand affair. So, and of course, on careers in wedding planning. So there are those who are probably in Bombay, who've freelanced at weddings or whose friend is a DJ. They kind of have a vague idea of how this industry works.
Mm.
But just as how, uh, a young lady that day, she saw a reel of Pooja Dadlani, who is Shah Rukh Khan's
Shahrukh's.
manager, and probably she read a news clip about how she earns 8 crores a year. And the
Mm.
question she asked was something so innocent, is what I call it. What is the course that one does to be a star secretary?
Okay.
I think it's kind of same for wedding planner. While there are a lot of institutes for event management, you really, to be a successful wedding planner, there are a lot of other skills beyond your degree.
Mm.
And even without that degree, you can join an event management company or a wedding planning company.
Very interesting.
So those are the kinds of things which I get from real users, or also about a lot of them who are just fascinated about how what my typical day is like as a co-founder. How many of the weddings which we write about I attend?
Mm.
Is there any location or a destination wedding hotspot I've not been to? So these are the kind of questions I'm often asked.
Tell us about the answers. So, of the weddings that you have attended in the last few years,
Yeah.
as someone who's CEO of WeddingSutra, what have been your observations? What have been your takeaways? What are the trends, anecdotes, any inside stories that you'd like to share with our audience?
So one of them, the first wedding, just as how the first fine dining experience you have,
Yeah.
that food will always be very tasty, right?
Mm.
Similarly, the first time I attended a wedding in Thailand, it was a family from Dubai. It was quite an eye opener for me to see how somebody from Dubai has flawlessly executed this wedding in Thailand. Marwadi family. I have attended weddings all over the country, but there are some places which I have not been to. One of them being very close to my home, which is Ambi Valley,
Mm.
which was quite a hot spot between 2010 and 2015. But interestingly, I've never been for a wedding in Ambi Valley. I would love to travel to the Northeast. I've not been there for a wedding, maybe Siliguri,
Mm.
or in the South, I've not been to Pondicherry. So these are some places I would internationally. I've been to weddings in Turkey and Bali and Thailand, all over the Middle East. Uh, while I've traveled a lot in Europe, I've not attended a wedding in Europe.
What's the most extravagant thing you've seen? Like, even for someone who does this for a profession, and you attend a wedding and you're like, oh my God, I haven't seen this ever before.
I would really think it would to get the most extravagant thing would be to get a top Bollywood star to dance at your wedding, because that
Mm.
is fairly expensive, because it's not just the fee you're paying him or her,
Mm.
but but all the other expenses which go into the tech rider and hospitality. So obviously, getting an international pop star to perform at your wedding is one of the most expensive things, because let's face it, a lot of other stuff which you do, whether it's on decor or food, it's about 1,000 or 2,000 people, right?
Yeah.
But to have an international pop star perform at your wedding is a fairly expensive.
And how accessible are these guys? Like, now, let's say that it's somebody's wedding and I'm invited
Yeah,
and I get to see a great performance by whoever,
yeah,
could be Justin, Beyonce,
yeah.
whoever. How accessible are these guys? Like, can I go there and get a selfie taken with them, or
It's
not
not.
allowed?
There is a lot of protocol involved, because at the end of the day, stars like to maintain a protocol, right? I asked the stars that,
Uh,
when you attend a wedding, do you? They say I would love to go and have buffet breakfast, but I want to keep my aura there, right? I don't
yeah,
want
yeah,
uh, the uh, the guests to see me in my track pant and t-shirt in the morning when I'm going to be making a grand entry in the evening.
yeah.
So even in fact, there are a lot of stars who also have a contract with the family that the guests cannot be taking videos.
Oh wow. Okay.
But of course, it's very difficult now to just tell the guests, you can't take photos. There was a time when some in many weddings, especially Bollywood weddings, there would be the no phone policy,
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
or all guests would be requested
Oh yeah.
not to, upload photos anyway. But today, you know how important
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the phone is in your life, right? Imagine telling a 25-year-old you can't put up anything on Instagram.
I'll tell you what, the reason why I asked you is that on our show, we've had a few very large finance brands come in who have Bollywood superstars as their brand ambassadors. You'll see them in their ads. And,
Right.
whenever I've spoken to them out here, they've said that whenever they, at least a few of them, I'm obviously not going to name them out here. Some of them are accessible. There's one superstar who's, this guest told me that he takes the selfie with you. So because he knows the right angles and all that. So that's the reason why I want to know how accessible are these guys. So is it like it depends, or by and large you can't, they are
Yes.
there on the stage and we are here in the audience. After that, the most important thing, food. What's happening there? What are the trends? What's something interesting that you see? Um, how can a family differentiate really on the food when it comes to a wedding? Like, is quantity, quality, experience what matters out there?
We all know that how important food is at an Indian wedding. You attend a wedding, you come back home. The first thing your father, mother, or your wife asks you, what do you eat? That continues to be there, but there are so many other elements today. There's decor, there's entertainment. So, in the last couple of years, the buffet has only become, bigger.
Mm,
But a lot of couples are now interested in more live counters. And we've seen it all, right? It started with Chinese, and now you get food from every part of the world. And the other thing is, of course, so many restaurants today in this Instagram age. I think the most interesting thing to have at a wedding is to have probably a Rameshwaran cafe from Bangalore doing
nice.
their bende dosas,
Yeah. Oh,
or to have Bougie Cafe
uh,
serving some of their top selling dishes.
yeah.
So it's really about these restaurant experiences, or to have, imagine if the Kesar Dhaba from Amritsar was coming in, whipping up hot chole bhature.
Yeah.
That is something which guests look forward to enjoying.
The food has become an experience then.
An experience, and it's about restaurant experiences in the buffet setup.
Fantastic future plans. Anything that you want to share? We are wrapping up this episode. What's happening at Wedding Sutra and what do you plan to do going forward? Because it looks like the wedding industry is only going to become bigger and bigger and bigger in India.
I think I'm not in the wedding industry, I'm in the happiness industry. This
Nice.
keeps me happy, and that is what is most important for me today and hopefully tomorrow too.
Cool. So now that we're done with the bulk of the episode, the main part of the episode, there are some fun questions that we thought
Sure.
we will ask you. What is the most memorable wedding you've come across through Wedding Sutra?
Well, the first big Indian wedding which happened in Florence, it was of Sajan Jindal's daughter. We enjoyed writing about it because it was the first time we were writing about an Indian wedding in Florence. Some fabulous venues,
Wow.
and yeah, that's one of the weddings which I enjoyed writing about. Yeah.
If you were to plan, I know that you're not a wedding planner, but still, if you were to plan a wedding for a celebrity, who would it be? Whose wedding would you love to plan for and why?
Maybe Sarah Tendulkar's wedding, because I attended one of the wedding functions of Sachin and Anjali Tendulkar. So
Wow.
it was a very nice, elegant affair because we knew Anjali's grandmother, and it was planned with a lot of taste and with great Gujarati food. So it'll be very interesting to know how Sachin and Anjali,
Nice.
and knowing them, it'll be a simple wedding, but with a lot of personal touches.
Very interesting. I'm going to grab a spin off from that question for our audience out here. Maybe there's someone who's listening in and wants to know from you, Parthip, please tell me how to plan my wedding. What are maybe the two or three things I should focus on? Help me out
Sure.
there.
There's nothing called the best wedding planner. The planner is somebody who works within your budget, whose forte is your venue. That's the first thing. If you are asking somebody to recommend a vendor, please be specific where the wedding is happening, how many guests are there,
Hmm.
and when it's happening. because a winter wedding in one venue may be double the cost of a summer wedding.
Okay.
And finally, do your research online, but also when it comes to costs, consult your friends or family members who've also got married in the same location, because they will exactly be able to tell you which vendor quoted how much and what they finally spent.
Fantastic. My standard question to all our guests on the regular Pesa Vesa is usually what book are you reading? But with you, I want to, since I've already asked you which wedding you can remember, what I want to ask you is any wedding movie or anything related to weddings that you've seen and you would like to recommend to our listeners,
Sure.
audience.
I really enjoyed watching Monsoon Wedding by Meera
Mira
Nair,
Nair.
because the decorator there, Dubey, was very real, and it had what is called the Shadi Ka Ghar. A Shadi Ka Ghar is always special because it's different from any wedding venue,
Yeah.
and they beautifully, kind of conveyed or depicted real scenarios in a
Nice.
real wedding.
Monsoon Wedding 2001, Mira Nair. Made in Heaven? I mean, if you've seen the series, I
Yes,
don't
of
know if
course,
you.
I've
Yeah.
seen the series.
Yeah. Okay, okay.
Nice,
Chalo,
yes.
theek hai. Folks, that's it on that happy note. That is a wrap on this episode of Pesa Vaisa. My guest, Parthip Thyagarajan, CEO of WeddingSutra. Parthip, thank you so much for doing this for our audience.
Thank you so much, Anupam. It was a pleasure interacting
Great
with
to
you.
have you here.